Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So, Strixhaven spoiler season keeps moving forward and we keep getting more and more exciting cards. So if you haven't seen my episode from earlier today where I talk about the mana rock that can win you the game, make sure you go check that out. Atraxa players and Locust God players rejoice because you have yet another win con. But in all seriousness, a lot of commanders can actually use that really unique mana rock. But this episode is going to be on something completely different with the very first sorcery that you can include any number of them in your deck. That's right, this is the Relentless Rats, the Persistent Petitioners, the Shadowborn Apostles of sorceries. And if you don't know what those cards are, then what I just said is complete nonsense to you. So I apologize for that, and let me explain by jumping into it. First off, a big thank you to MTG Goldfish for this translated version. So, Dragon's Approach is a sorcery for 2 and a red. It says, Dragon's Approach deals 3 damage to each opponent. You may exile Dragon's Approach and 4 other cards named Dragon's Approach from your graveyard. If you do, search your library for a dragon creature card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. And a deck can have any number of cards named Dragon's Approach. This is the very first time that we are seeing this text on a sorcery. And it's even the first time that we're seeing this on anything outside of a creature. The 4 other cards that have this text are Rat Colony, Relentless Rats, Persistent Petitioners, and Shadowborn Apostle. So in a game like Commander, outside of basic lands, these are the only cards that you can have multiple copies of. Okay, fine, yes, 7 dwarfs as well, and I'm sure I'm missing something else, but still. This is a rare thing to see, and again, this is the first time that we're seeing this on a sorcery. Regardless, let's break down what this card does. First off, 3 mana to deal 3 damage to each opponent isn't all that bad. It might not be something that you'd include in most Commander decks, but it's better than nothing. But the important part again is getting a dragon out of your deck and putting it directly onto the battlefield. That is an incredibly powerful thing. Now to achieve that tutor effect, you need to meet a certain requirement. When you cast your Dragon's Approach, if you've got 4 other Dragon's Approaches in your graveyard, then you can exile all of them, then you get to tutor. So essentially you're trading in 5 of these for a dragon. So the most straightforward approach obviously is cast 5 of these. The first 4 that you cast still deal 3 damage, but they're not going to get the tutor effect. When you cast the 5th one, then you exile those 5 cards and then you get your tutor. This is definitely the most straightforward approach, but it is also the slowest approach. And you might just be aggravating your opponents by pinging them for 15 damage each. So other ways to do it are discard effects such as wheels. If you discard a bunch of these into your graveyard, you can easily meet that 4 card requirement. Then even if you just cast only 1 of these, you still meet that requirement and you tutor. Again, you are exiling the one that you cast and 4 the ones in your graveyard, so you're gonna have to keep filling your yard. So mill might be another strategy that works for this. If you can keep filling your graveyard with these, then you can keep tutoring more often with them too. But there are also certain cards that you want to consider that in Commander are generally bad, but with this kind of a strategy are fantastic. The first card that you most definitely want to consider is Thrumming Stone. Now before I get into the card, I just want to mention that this is currently a $30 card. That being said, this is probably the best card to add into this kind of a deck. It says spells you control have Ripple 4. Ripple is a very weird mechanic that shows up on pretty much no cards. It says whenever you play a spell, you may reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may play any revealed cards with the same name as the spell without paying their mana cost. Put the rest in the bottom of your library. Basically, you chain from one Dragon's Approach into another, into another, into another, and you see where this is going. As long as you keep hitting one Dragon's Approach in the top 4, you're going to keep going. So again, that's 3 damage over and over and over again, and essentially every 5th cast, you're getting a dragon into play. So yeah, that's gonna end the game. Another fantastic card for this deck is Pyromancer Ascension. Luckily, this one is a lot more affordable than Thrumming Stone at less than $1. It says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that has the same name as a card in your graveyard, you may put a quest counter on Pyromancer Ascension. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell while Pyromancer Ascension has 2 or more quest counters on it, you may copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Again, this card really shouldn't work in a singleton format like Commander, but with Dragon's Approach, it is fantastic. It's going to be very easy for you to get to those 2 quest counters, and then after you do that, whenever you're casting any instant or sorcery, you're getting 2 of them. So this can generate you a lot of value throughout the game. But another card that is absolutely incredible for this kind of a strategy is Secret Salvage. It says, exile target non-land card from your graveyard, search your library for any number of cards with the same name as that card, reveal them and put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. So all you need is 1 Dragon's Approach in your graveyard. Then you cast this, exile that one, and you get every single Dragon's Approach out of your library into your hand. Or I should say, as many as you want. There might be some circumstances where you don't want them all. Regardless, then you're going to have to move to discard, and then discard a lot of those, and then essentially any single time you cast a Dragon's Approach, you get that tutor effect. So yeah, this can definitely set you up for success. Now keep in mind that there's a delicate balance of cards when it comes to a deck like this, because again, you need to include a critical mass of Dragon's Approaches. On top of that, you also need dragons to tutor for. That being said, another one to consider and one that you might be able to squeeze into the deck is Locket of Yesterdays. It's an artifact for just 1 mana and says spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each card with the same name as that spell in your graveyard. So again, at a certain point, you can start casting Dragon's Approaches for just 1 mana. Now if you've only got 4 in your graveyard and you exile all of them with your next Dragon's Approach, then it's going to reset. But again, it can still save you a lot of mana throughout the game. Another one to potentially consider for the right build is Harness the Storm. It says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you may cast target card with the same name as that spell from your graveyard. You still pay its cost. So if we've got a graveyard that is full with Dragon's Approaches, we can start casting them from our graveyard as well when we cast one from our hand. Again, not saying that it's good to include in every single one of these kinds of decks, but it is just one to consider. And if for whatever reason you want to take a completely different approach to this deck and just make a bunch of squirrel tokens, consider Nantuko Shrine. It says whenever a player casts a spell, that player creates X11 green squirrel creature tokens, where X is the number of cards in all graveyards with the same name as that spell. So when you cast your Dragon's Approaches, you're probably not going to be exiling any from your graveyard, you're just going to keep making more and more squirrels. Because as everyone knows, squirrels are better than dragons. Just kidding. Or am I? I don't know. Anyways, let's talk about what kind of dragons that you actually want to tutor for, though, in a deck that's not built around Nantuko Shrine. Now, one of my first tutor targets that I thought of was Dragon Mage. It has whenever it deals combat damage to a player, each player discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. So this helps us wheel getting more Dragon's Approaches into our graveyard and our hand. And speaking of drawing, of course we could use Niv Mizzet Perrin as well. Niv has, when you draw a card, Niv Mizzet deals 1 damage to any target, and whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. So we can ping some things, and this is going to draw us a lot of cards throughout the game if it stays in play. But if we want some extra mana, Savage Ventmaw is a fantastic target as well. It has, when it attacks, you add red, 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 green, green, green to your mana pool. Until end of turn, this mana doesn't empty from your mana pool as steps and phases end. So yeah, 6 extra mana, that's basically just 2 extra Dragon's Approaches. Or we can go get Hellkite Tyrant and steal everyone's mana rocks. Hellkite Tyrant has, when it deals combat damage to a player, gain control of all artifacts that player controls. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. So yeah, we can steal artifacts and maybe just win the game in the process. Or we can go get Hellkite Courser, which has a fantastic ETB. It has, when it enters the battlefield, you may put a commander you own from the command zone onto the battlefield. It gains haste, return to the command zone at the beginning of the next end step. So if we've got a powerful commander and we want to get it out for free and attack with it right away, we can do that. Or maybe we'll go get Scion of the Ur-Dragon, which is a fantastic toolbox dragon. Side note, Toolbox Dragon is definitely a fantastic band name. Anyways, it has pay 2, search your library for a dragon permanent card and put it into your graveyard. If you do, Scion of the Ur-Dragon becomes a copy of that card until end of turn, then shuffle your library. So we can temporarily turn this into whatever dragon we want from our deck. And at the same time, we put that dragon into our graveyard, which is a fantastic reanimation target for Bladewing the Risen. It has, when it enters the battlefield, you may return target dragon permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. But another dragon that we might want to go get is one that makes an absurd amount of dragons with Dragon Broodmother. It has, at the beginning of each upkeep, put a 1/1 red and green dragon creature token with flying and Devour 2 into play. Keep in mind that says each upkeep, so yeah, each trip around the table we're getting 4 of those. And speaking of an absurd amount of dragons, there's Utvara Hellkite. It says whenever a dragon you control attacks, create a 6/6 red dragon creature token with flying. So this can essentially double up our dragon army each turn. And finally, a great dragon to tutor for is Scourge of Valkis. It says whenever it or another dragon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals X damage to our creature or player where X is the number of dragons you control. So if we get this out early, the damage can keep building and building and building with the more dragons that we get into play. Now, yes, there are some dragons that I haven't highlighted, and that's probably because there's a ton of dragons in Magic and there are a lot of great choices. but that's also because a few of them would make fantastic commanders for this deck. But before we talk about those, let's talk about some creatures that are technically dragons. Morophon the Boundless, Mass Vandal, and Morite of the Frost have Changeling. So that means that they are every single creature type, including dragon, which means that we can tutor for them and put them directly into play with Dragon's Approach. When Morophon the Boundless comes into play, we choose a creature type, and we're obviously choosing dragons. So then our dragon spells cost Wooburg less to cast, and our other dragon creatures we control get +1/+1. So this is a great mana reducer as well as a pump effect. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, this can be a great commander option as well, so consider this one too. Regardless, Masked Vandal is another option for us to tutor for if we really need to get rid of an artifact or enchantment. But out of all these, I think Morite of the Frost might be the most powerful include. It says you may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of a permanent you control, except it's legendary and snow addition to other types, and if it's a creature, enters with 2 additional +1/+1 counters on it and has Changeling. Basically, this comes in as a bigger, better version of one of our dragons. And having 2 Udvara Hellkites in play can get incredibly out of hand. But speaking of cards that can get out of hand, let's talk about some potential commanders for this deck. Now, if you want to go with a very straightforward mono-red approach, Lapis is a fantastic choice. Just put a lot of Dragon's Approaches, Mountains, and Red Dragons in your deck, and you're probably good to go. Lapis says whenever another non-token dragon enters the battlefield under your control, create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying. And you can also pay 1 in red to pump your dragons until end of turn. So yeah, now whenever you tutor for that dragon and get 1 into play, a buddy comes along with it. But if you're going for a 5-color deck, the Dragon is always a great option. It has Eminence and makes your dragon spells cost 1 less to cast. And then it says whenever 1 or more dragons you control attack, draw that many cards, then you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. So a lot of card advantage, as well as getting something into play for free and hitting for 10 damage. Yeah, this is a powerful dragon, and you might just want it in your 99 so you can tutor for it. And if that's the case, maybe choose another 5-color commander, and maybe even a non-dragon one with Kenrith. Kenrith has a ton of abilities that can really help you out. He can give your creatures trample and haste, get counters on your creatures, gain you 5 life, draw you cards, and get creatures back from your graveyard. So yeah, he does a lot. And again, by utilizing a 5-color commander that's not a dragon, you can include all the dragon ones in your deck. And being able to cheat out the Dragon from your deck is a very powerful thing. But now it's time for me to give you my final thoughts on Dragon's Approach. I really like the design of this card. Being able to include a ton of copies of 1 sorcery in your deck is a really cool thing. And again, this can be powerful, but not overpowered in my opinion. Well, that is of course unless you've got $30 or so lying around and you've got a Thrumming Stone in play. Then things can get pretty out of hand. Regardless, I'm really excited to see the different types of builds around this card. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.